Are you ready to become a leader and change maker by getting your PhD? Ready to stop stressing and actually take action so you create offer letters instead of rejections? Then this is the spot for you. I'm Dr. Natalie Morse, and I'm here to help you get into your dream PhD with full funding. Let's go. Welcome to the podcast. I'm Dr. Natalie Morse, and today we're going to be speaking with Shamiyana, who is in their PhD doing counseling psychology, and they'll talk all about their research and their journey to get there. I think what will be really interesting is to hear about their non-traditional path. So they started undergrad later than most folks, and then they went directly through to their PhD, which a lot of people have the thought, oh, I must do a master's, I must have 5 years experience or something. And I think Shamiyana will be able to tell you a lot about her journey and her process. So welcome, Shamiyana.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Okay. Well, maybe share a little bit about your background and your academic journey and what that looked like.
Sure. So I am originally from New York City, but I moved to Michigan as an adult, so at 18. And I enrolled in just your basic undergrad. It's a public institution. Did okay my first year, not great. And by my second year, I realized maybe I should take a step back from this and come back to it when I know what I want to do. Because I had a lot of changes happening in my personal life, and I didn't really know where I wanted to go in terms of studying, but also like in life, period. Like I didn't know if I was moving out of Michigan. I didn't know if I wanted to go switch majors because I switched so many times. And kind of a little bit of that is the classic ADHD experience. You switch majors about 4 or 5 times, but I needed time, basically. I mean, we know this, like high school seniors are forced kind of to know what exactly they want to do off the bat. And I think having that time in between, so I took about 3 years, almost 3 years off between my second year. I was 1 semester into my second year, and I was like, okay, I'll drop out. I can always come back to this. It's always an option. I just need time right now. And I took that time off. I had a lot of growth during that time, learned more about myself. I learned more about the world, and I began school again during COVID, which was interesting. I'll say that. That was fall 2020. I began undergrad, and I began at community college so that I could afford, basically, paying my way through school now because I didn't have family support or anything like that. So I did that for a year. I took as many courses as I could possibly take so that when I got into a 4-year institution for undergrad the following year, I'd basically be done with full 2 years. And so I would only have like a year and a half, 2 years left. I did end up doing that. So I finished community college. I transferred to the University of Michigan, and I was there for about a year and a half to 2 years. But I took I don't even remember now, 24 credits or something each semester to make sure that would happen. And yeah, that's what generally.
I remember when we started working together, you were finishing up your undergrad and you were taking an insane load. And I was like, what's the rush? And you were like, oh, I took this gap and I want to finish and I know what I want to do now. So you were ready to go. Is that kind of what you were aiming for?
A little bit. And I wanted to show, because I knew that I was not going to try to get a master's before my PhD. I wanted to show that I can handle, a heavier course load. And I did. I got straight A's. I even got, I forgot what it's called, something award, whatever. It's for people who take an insane amount of credits and get straight A's.
Wow.
From the University of Michigan, yeah. So I graduated with high distinction.
Congrats. So as you're finishing undergrad, you knew you were going to do PhD like the whole time, or how did that work?
The person who inspired me to pursue the PhD has passed. And so I like her this way. But basically, I've always kind of known I've been interested in psychology. Like in high school and middle school, I would have teachers tell me oh, you should, are you interested in psych? Just because of the things I would say in class. And I always told them yes. But, coming from the background, culturally that I did, and being first gen, psych is not seen as an option for people from that background. And I clearly disagree, but I didn't feel confident enough in myself to really believe that I could do it, despite, not having any support, despite having no one that's graduated from college. I don't even know even high school in my immediate and extended family, really. So I wasn't sure. And then I met this person. She was actually my therapist in 2020. And then I was in actually veterinary medicine, and I shouldn't have done that because I care about animals too much and I can't put them down. I realized that pretty quickly, and I just kind of was talking to her about how I've always been interested in psych. I knew that if I were to do it, I would want to go the full, all the way through to the PhD. I wouldn't want to stay stuck at a master's. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I just mean personally, for me, my own goals, I knew I wanted to have as much flexibility as possible with what I could do after my education. And because my experience with the undergrad and having to drop out, I don't know what I don't know. I needed that time and the experience to understand, yes, this is something that I could do. And so pursuing the PhD, obviously I have several reasons for wanting to do that, but mainly I wanted to give myself as many opportunities as I could, because I don't know what I want. Even now, like when people ask me, like, are you going to do research? Are you going to do counseling primarily? I'm like, I don't know. I probably will change my mind 10 times before the end of my PhD, and that's fine. I have created the scaffolding so that I can have that, flexibility and have that level of choice.
That's my mantra. And I love that you say that, because I think some people get wrapped up in like, well, I don't have it 199% figured out, and so I can't take one step forward. And I'm like, dude, you can't predict the next 100 steps without taking the first step. So like, let's do that. As long as you have thought, obviously you thought about it, and you know that the opportunities you're creating are good opportunities. You just don't know. Like, I think some people think that they need to start a PhD with like a job offer in hand. They need to be like, okay, in 4 years, I'm going to cash this in and get my only job offer that exists. And that just doesn't happen, obviously. So
yeah. And even with the master's, that doesn't happen. Like, you don't know where you're going to end up, even after getting the master's, after getting, just your regular BA. And that might not have been the case 40 years ago. But nowadays, I mean, everyone goes to college, just about. And it's not as competitive as it was before, having a degree. So yeah, I totally agree. I have met a lot of people who have that mindset that they need to have, that they're going to succeed, which is a little ironic, given that, like, you have to, like you were saying, take the first step. You don't know until you try. Nothing's really going to happen until you've already failed at that point because you haven't started.
Yes. It's like you're already living your worst case scenario. So
yeah. I learned that from you.
Okay, good. My mantra kicks in.
Okay.
Okay. So tell me about, you went about thinking about the application process. What did that look like for you?
See, because I knew I didn't have any friends or family that I could ask for like advice or help or guidance about the PhD process, I knew I needed help, which is why I found you. Thank God for that Instagram ad that came up. And I thought about it for, I think, a year before I invested, because I wasn't sure if this was the kind of support that I needed. I was in that same kind of like space where I needed like 100% guarantee that this would be fruitful, and that's never going to happen. And so I got to a point where I was like, I could continue doing what I'm doing right now for who knows how long, which was, I was a crisis responder. And I enjoyed the work, but I wanted a lot more. I wanted to see clients individually. I wanted to do research. I had already been involved in research in undergrad, so I knew that I enjoyed it. And I knew the only way forward is to move forward and create opportunities for myself. And if I want to do that well and not, I don't like saying waste my time, but not, I would say maybe not use my time as effectively. I would need to give myself as much support and guidance and expertise that I didn't have. And that's why I thought, yeah, let me just go through with this and start and try and see where I end up. And obviously it worked out.
Yay. That's amazing. Good for you. Okay, wait, more questions. So a lot of people will say, especially in the psych field, that if you don't have like 2 years of dedicated research experience where you're like, a lab manager or an RA or something at like a fancy university, that you're not going to get in. Could you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah. So I know what you're talking about. The common, stereotype is that people who apply for a psych PhD, it doesn't really matter which program specifically or discipline, need to have at least, it's not even 2, it's like 3 or 4 years of experience. And I heard that a lot while I was applying, but I knew that there were people who got in without any of that experience. And I knew that there were programs that valued more than just what research experience you had. Like we've talked about before, the value that you can extract from those experiences that you do have, even if it's just 1 semester, means so much more to PIs than I think applicants realize. Because you can have, I've met people who have, like you said, were lab managers for 4 or 5 years, or have been doing research for a decade, and they still don't get in. they don't get offers. It's because they can't make meaning of those experiences in a way that really aligns with what, the admissions committee is looking for, what that faculty is looking for. When it gets to that, it's like, how can you not fit yourself to what they need, but how can you best advocate for yourself when you're talking with them to show them exactly how you've developed and grown, what you've learned through having the experience. It's the same thing as like in undergrad, where they're not just looking at your GPA. Your GPA is pretty heavily, considered. I want to know that you do stuff outside of school, that you have extracurriculars, things that you're otherwise passionate about, your SAT score. It's never just one thing.
That's true. It's never just one thing. But you did have research experience. So maybe could you share a little bit about that?
Yes. I love talking about this specifically because I felt so much imposter syndrome. I know now I can be like, oh yeah, I had enough. I didn't have that much, but I was fine. But no. Me a year ago, like a little over a year ago, I would say. Because by this point last year, I was fine about this, but because I had offers, I felt insecure. And I had a lot of imposter syndrome and was obviously extremely stressful. And I felt a lot of anxiety thinking, I'm in rooms during interviews with people who have been lab managers at E-Leagues. And I come from, 2 years after community college. I'm older than a lot of people who were in those rooms, which is true. And still now, even in my cohort, I'm the oldest right now. And I don't think that's a bad thing. But to get back to what I was saying.
How old are you?
27.
Okay.
I know.
I mean, not that age is just a number, but it's not like you're like 47,
I know. But people, just the way that people feel left behind if they're not like 22 starting or like 25 and starting, because at that point you would have your master's. Really, I'm speaking to that because there's a lot of stigma around like having to take a break, having to take a gap year, which is, if it makes you more confident, if it gives you time to show up as your best self, why not take that time if that is available? To get back to what like an imposter, I was really nervous, but I knew that the experiences that I had and the way that I could talk about them, the way that you basically showed me I had to them. And also that I knew just from hearing other graduate students who are actually in PhD programs talk about their experiences and hearing faculty talk about what they're looking for in students. I knew that mattered more than anything else. It didn't matter the number of months that I had any kind of research experience or the exact positions I held in having those experiences. I didn't have any presentations under my belt. I didn't have any publications under my belt. But when I sat down to my interview at the joint PhD psych and feminist psychology, the first thing the faculty member said was, "You have a lot of research experience. Tell me about that." And immediately I was like, why did I worry about this for so long? Because that was just so validating to hear. And that was kind of brought it all back together. I knew kind of that the meaning of the experiences, what I got from it, mattered more than the experiences themselves in terms of like length of time or like positions held. But that moment solidified it for me. And so I have been telling anyone and everyone that it does not matter how many semesters that you have research experience. You can have 10 years and not have anything to say about that. And that's not going to help you at the end of the day.
What do you think, like if I was a person and I was looking at my current profile or looking to get more experience, when you talk about the meaning you can get from it, what should I be prioritizing or thinking about?
That is a great question. So maybe if I talk through my process. So I knew that I wanted, because I wasn't getting the master's, I would not have that additional research experience that you would get through having a master's thesis. So I wanted to show them that I can have a variety of different kinds of experiences within psychology. Because also I didn't really know like kind of where I wanted to land in terms of like going to a counseling or clinical or social program. And I can talk more about that in a minute, but I knew that I needed to do as much of the research process as possible, like get experiences in different areas. So I started with, just doing trials basically in personality research. And I didn't get to any of the like analysis and writing in that one experience, but I also didn't have any experience creating an experiment. And so to fill those pieces, the pieces that came later and earlier in the research process, I found a different opportunity. I found it I didn't There wasn't an advertisement. There wasn't like a job that I applied for. I basically just reached out to a professor I knew that was doing research. And even though it wasn't in my exact, interest area, he was doing neurocognitive research, which I'm definitely not interested in terms of like my own preferences. But yeah. And that gave me the experience that I needed to say, I know what this process looks like from beginning to end. And that mattered obviously way more than me just saying, I have 10 years of experience, 5 years of experience doing this. Take me. And obviously that's not how those people come.
I get it. No, it's the research pipeline. And yes, I think that's a really good way to think about it is what pieces have I done? Where are my gaps? So to your point, if I did a bunch of, trials and studies, data collection, but I never did the data analysis, like that's where my next role should be. Or the existing role, I need to say, hey, can I expand in this way? So I think there's also room to expand in your current roles that I think a lot of people leave money on the table, so to speak.
Yes. So you're never going to know the answer to a question if you don't ask the question. They have to ask for the position. I think this has come from just pure need to have to do this because I didn't have that, support that a lot of students do to advocate for myself and to make spaces for myself where no space existed for myself previously. So that's kind of my personality in general. I know a lot of people who now even who are like, yeah, I don't know how you did that. But there's never going to be a perfect moment. There's never going to be a perfect space for you to fit in. And where there are moments and opportunities, you have a lot of competition because everyone knows. But if you go out of your own way to ask for an opportunity, that's your own competition in that place. There's nothing else there. So I did that a lot for myself all throughout doing this entire process. Like I was saying when I went back to school and took way too many credits, my actual college counselor told me not to. She said, I have ADHD and people with ADHD typically don't do that well, that I should not even try and that I should lighten my course load. I did not listen to her because I knew I could if I wanted to. And I did it. Yep.
I love what you said too about you sought out somebody who was doing research and not your exact focus. How did you choose that? Or was it just because you guys had a class together or something? Or how did you find that opportunity?
Yeah.
Create that opportunity for yourself.
A year before I began that position, I had a class with him. It was a research-based class. These types of classes, they're just kind of generally introducing you to what research looks like. You do some kind of pretend experiment basically as a part of an assignment during the class. It's not anything major, but did really well in the class. And I knew that I had made a good impression. And so I reached out a year later. I was like, hey, I was in your class this semester. It was really easy, honestly. I said, hey, I was in your class this semester. It wasn't even in person. It was an asynchronous class. This guy had almost no idea who I was other than a name on Canvas. And I was like, are you doing research? I should mention this. So I went through the U of M website, the department that I was interested in. So I tried looking for any professor that had published within the last 5 years because I knew that they were actively involved in research. And so even if there was no research lab website or job posting explicitly for, research assistants, I could go to them and ask them, hey, I see that you're doing this research. I'm interested and I'd love to be a part of that. I could help you with blah, blah, blah. Or I have experience in blah, blah, blah. And then attach your CV and send it along. And it took me all of, 30 minutes, not even that, to look that up and send that email. And yeah, I got a good solid 6 months of experience out of that. And that experience I talked about, I think 3 months, I began talking about in my interviews and the pre-interviews, you have to do the informal ones 3 months after I got it. So I never expected to have that, really become anything that I could even talk about in interviews because I haven't done any real analysis yet. We were mainly just designing an experiment. But you'd be surprised what's relevant and what professors, faculty are interested in hearing from you. I was definitely several times throughout the entire process. I thought, there's nothing. This is not important work. This is not meaningful work. It was only after a lot of reflection and a lot of, thorough research on my end in researching, obviously, what the faculty is interested in and what their research is like and what their preferred methods or whatever. Yeah. So that generally I hope that gives you an idea of what it was.
Yes. Thank you. Yes. That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, I've had other people who started a role a few months before applications were due and they can successfully talk about it, market it, yeah, just because it's new doesn't mean it doesn't have value or that you haven't already done some cool stuff. So yeah, I appreciate that. Okay, maybe talk more about how you decided to like apply to clinical versus social versus counseling. Like, tell me all the areas that you applied to and kind of how you went about that.
Thinking about that now, I just think of how crazy it was that I did that, because it's very rare that someone would to those different kinds of programs, because in social psych, you're not trained as a clinician. And so typically the understanding is somebody who is interested pretty seriously in counseling and clinical would never apply to a social psych program because they want to be a clinician. That's like one of the main reasons why they're pursuing graduate, study. I did not know for sure if I only wanted to do, like research-based stuff, be a professor, work in academia, or if I also wanted to be a clinician. I knew that counselors faced a lot of burnout. My own experiences working as a crisis responder kind of solidified, yes, I do want an opportunity where I can have a choice where I don't have to do that. And in clinical and counseling psych PhD programs, it's required. Like, you have to train as a clinician. It's not an option, even if that's not something you're directly interested in. So I wanted to leave the door open. And a lot of the research that I was interested in and still am was happening in the social psych realm about stereotypes, racism, systems of inequality, reproductive justice, work with marginalized populations, at the intersection of all of those things. All of that was mainly in social psych, not to say that it's not in clinical psych or counseling psych, but a lot of clinical psych is focused on kind of like the neurological impact, that has, the, measuring like alcohol use and like suicide rates, which is great and fine. But I was interested kind of more in the counseling, which I later found out, side of things, the counseling psych side of things. I could get into like kind of the differences between clinical and counseling. Okay.
Yeah.
So clinical psych, counseling psych are really similar. Counseling psych, however, came from vocational psych, which was created to acknowledge basically issues of multiculturalism and gender bias in the industry. And so vocational psychologists help people figure out what they want for their careers, and counseling psych kind of grew from that in the late 80s, early 90s. So it's not been around long, but it was created to address that problem. Clinical psych mainly focused on white populations, that are the majority. And so the minority populations were being ignored or left behind, unaddressed, basically, in their needs and issues that they had. So that's where counseling psych historically has come from. I know that because I learned about it in my counseling psych PhD program. But so I was going through that process of analyzing kind of what options I had, because at the end, I ended up with offers in each, which is ironic: counseling psych, clinical psych, and social psych. And so at that point, I had to really consider, what values do I have, and do they align with the values of the program and the faculty? Will this give me the kinds of opportunities that I, have been looking for? I'm definitely not expecting them to have the opportunities ready and available. There's no direct pipeline to anything. I needed the tools and the environment to be able to create those opportunities for myself. And the interview process, I hope people, when they do get to interviews, really assess the school and the program. I know they're assessing you, and I know that there's a lot of anxiety about appearing like the perfect candidate, but you're also assessing the program. And this is where you're going to be for 4, 5, 6 years, depending on where you are. In psych, it's usually 5, 6 years, which is even more important. You have to know if this is truly a place where you can do well. You'd be happy. It's hard work, obviously, all of it's hard work, but can you still be happy? I say, I don't know where I heard this, but it's a struggle, but you don't have to suffer. So don't choose wisely. Make sure that you're assessing the program. And I kind of went into my interviews with that mindset. And so immediately off the bat, I knew the clinical psych program that I was looking at just wouldn't be a good fit for me. It was pretty pathological in its approach with different kinds of issues that people were dealing with, mental health crises. And it didn't really consider context of where people were coming from, their backgrounds. And social did, but I realized through that process how much I enjoyed working with clients in the crisis response position that I had. And so all of that in March, it's actually insane. A year ago, I realized, so this counseling psych program seems like the best choice, even though it's in Nebraska, even though I'm going to have to move further into the Midwest, which I did not want to do. Born and raised New York City. So whenever I tell
Yes.
people I'm from here, they're like, why are you here?
Yes.
Yeah. But the
I can
research is here.
understand.
The research is
Yes.
here. The things I'm passionate about are here. The counseling psych
Yeah.
program here is wonderful. Oh, I didn't mention that. The University of Nebraska-Lincoln is where I am.
There you go. So I love what you said about assessing the programs, because that's a big mindset thing we work on with our clients is assess and ask good questions and figure out what made sense for you. So
Yeah.
that's awesome.
I have, even while I was going through interviews, because some of them were on Zoom, some of them were in person, I would tell my HR every time, I'm like, I don't see, like, it's confusing to me that these applicants have gotten to this point, but then don't ask questions. You know, when faculty are like, do you have any questions about the programs? Are you kidding me? I'm not kidding. No. And it surprised me so much, because I'm like, you got to this point and you're going to lose this opportunity because you didn't advocate for yourself and ask questions. You didn't show that you knew about the program that you were actually in. And two of those people that I interviewed with, you know, like other applicants, one is now in a master's program because she didn't get into the PhD program, and the other one was unfunded. I was the only funded person, and I got a fellowship on top of that. And that's why I think, obviously that's not exactly why, but
Part of the puzzle.
I showed them I was interested. I asked questions, showed them that I was thinking really critically about this. And to be honest, I don't see why you would pursue a PhD if you're not willing at least to do and show that level. Because that's like kind of it is literally their first impression of you, other than whatever you put on a piece of paper, which anyone can do. So that was surprising.
Wow. I am also surprised by that. Asking questions is kind of my superpower. And I think I developed that through my PhD, but I love asking questions. And I know some people can find it offensive, like I dig a little bit deep, but I'm never doing it from a place of like judgment or, wanting to prove that I'm right. It's literally just like curiosity and trying to understand things better. And I think with that kind of energy, they're excited that you're excited, and it definitely is a positive response.
Yeah, like you were saying, it was magnetic. It was contagious. Every time I showed, I was always the person, I kind of have been this way my whole life, but it especially came out during the PhD interviews, always the person who asked too many questions, always the person who sat at the front, wasn't afraid of like how it would come off or anything like that. It's something I care about. I'm going to show that I care about it. It's not cringy. It's not embarrassing. It is what it is. I care about this, so I'm going to show you. And yeah, the faculty responded. Like it was contagious, like you were saying.
I love that. That's so good. Yes. And well, in your PhD, asking good questions is literally your job.
Yeah.
Because, no one's going to create the study for you. And even if they do, let's just pretend that they do, as things are progressing, there should be a million questions that come up because certain things are going to work, certain things are not going to work. What about this? What about that? Interpreting the data. If you can't ask good questions, like, you're really no good to them. So
yeah. No, that's exactly true. Yeah. And I've seen that happen now, even being in the program. There are people in the master's program, and not to say anything like, I'm not putting them down for this, but just seeing differences. They don't ask questions, even during like regular classes that we have. And I think that's fine. But I think that when you're striving for a position in a PhD program, really matters if you can ask questions. Because like you said, that's why you're there. That's why they want you. If you can't ask good enough questions, why do they have you? Like, that's what they're paying you for, in a sense.
Yeah. Otherwise, they would just have like undergrad that they tell, hey, do these 5 things and don't ask questions, right? That's a different role. Okay. So, what's your faith thing? Like, how does it felt starting your program? What does it feel like?
It's like I've dreamed of this for so long. And so being here and doing it now kind of like pinch me, mind blowing. Like I don't wrap my head around it. And on the other end, it's like, well, this is like grad school.
Just day to day. Yeah.
It's just like anything else. I'm taking classes. I have papers to write. I have exams. I'm cramming a lot of the time. I would say I enjoy the flexibility and the autonomy that you get in grad school. Obviously a lot more. I'm not taking gen eds. Like this is all stuff I'm directly really interested in. And the relationships that you can create with faculty have been really meaningful for me. The connections in the first, semester, I realized I wanted to be a part of the diversity committee here. Unfortunately, that might not be true next year, but we'll see. And people were telling me, don't do that. Like it's your first year, take it easy. acclimate to the environment, acclimate to what you're doing. But I was working full time and was taking a heavy course load, and just personal experiences in my life, I knew I had a greater capacity than probably some people might, most people might. I did it anyways. And that position has connected with so many more people and so many more opportunities within the program. Others in my cohort have not had. And it obviously was really important for me, just in terms of what I'm passionate about, you know, representation in minoritized communities and creating paths for advocacy for students who otherwise wouldn't be able to advocate for themselves. And that's been a joy too. It's something I'm passionate about, so that's been enjoyable by itself. But also, it's allowed me to create those connections and opportunities.
Win-wins. There should always be win-wins. I don't think we ever need to be a martyr for anything.
No.
I think we can have an impact, still create lives that are, you know, good and healthy and, you know, financially secure and happy for ourselves. Like, because otherwise we're just going to burn out. So I think, you being smart about, this fills me up. I'm also able to give. Like, I'm also able to create opportunities. Like, that's a win-win. So
it looks nice on my CV, but I also really enjoy it.
yeah, why the hell not? I love that. Okay. Any other advice you would give to people as they're starting their PhD journey or the application process, or anything that you thought was really helpful to you, or anything that we did that was helpful?
It's take it one day at a time. You're not trying to get into the program today. You're researching programs today. You're not trying to write your entire SOP in a day, drafting a paragraph. I think one of the most important things I gleaned from working with you guys is it's an iterative process. And it is perfectly fine if some days you just don't feel like it, but that should not stop you from continuing to work towards your goals. And you should not be overwhelmed with, I have to get into this program specifically because this is the kind of program that I have always dreamed of getting into. You'd be surprised like what you end up interested in after you do the interviews and after you do the research into the programs. I definitely was. I did not expect to be in Nebraska, but I think that more than anything else is something that I continually had to remind myself that I don't have to, you know, overwhelm myself in what can be and is an extremely overwhelming process. Putting so much pressure on myself to do everything perfectly, quickly, which is kind of, if you haven't gotten the idea from everything else I've said, kind of how I rolled with other things, like having to do like extra credits, taking on, you know, a full-time job, research, in addition to that coursework that I had. So I really wanted to be mindful and purposeful in everything that I did. I think if you do that, you're not going to be left in a position where you don't know what you want, you don't know where you want to go, you don't know what they want, and you don't know what you get from that program, if that makes sense.
So yes, exactly. You've closed all those loops. So you know exactly what you want, what they want, if it's a match, and then how to market that and how to speak to that, which, you can't learn that in one day.
No. The other thing I will say is get started as early as possible. I need, like, the majority of my time, more than anything else, was spent looking up programs and learning more about programs and learning more about what programs are looking for. I think that more information is, you know, better. So if you have opportunities where you can go to an open house or you can speak to a panel of current graduate students, take them. If you live near the university or PhD program that you're interested in, go visit. Ask to speak to current students. Current students are always happy to talk to, you know, prospective students about their experience. I'm not going to say I haven't met, but the majority of the people that I've met have been more than happy to tell me about what their experiences are like. I am also an example. I'm happy to talk with any prospective students. And I think that if you allow yourself to take it one day at a time and you give yourself enough time, you're setting yourself up in a way that you really, truly can't fail if you put in all the other, you know.
Yeah. I remember when we started working together, you were very stressed, and because you're like, I'm, you know, finishing undergrad and I need more research experience or this, that. And I was like, why can't you get some? And you're like, okay. And then you did. So like, I remember like having that conversation, like, okay, well, what's the holdup? And then you made it happen. So
I'm reading a book right now. It's called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And it's wonderful and I highly recommend it. It's a little dated, but it's cute. I'm listening to the audiobook. The primary thing that, like, her primary idea in the book is that everything you do is going to be stressful. If it's not stressful, it's because you've done it before. Every new thing you do is going to be stressful, but you don't have to be afraid of it. The fear that you feel is because it is a new thing. You should feel that fear. That fear means that you have an opportunity to learn, basically. And so she advocates that we shift our mindsets from fear is, I shouldn't do this, I shouldn't touch this, this is wrong, I'm doing something wrong, to, oh, like I don't know enough here, or I don't have enough of the resources, that I need to successfully, complete whatever it is or do whatever it is. She said that mindset shift, she's a PhD psychologist, that mindset shift has has not only helped her, but helped obviously like countless number of clients. And the book was written, I think, like 20, 30 years ago. So
it's an oldie. No, it makes perfect sense because the whole like beating yourself up, I'm doing something wrong. How is that going to help you make better results? Like literally the opposite. It's taking your energy, your brain power, and putting it somewhere that cannot possibly serve you. Like there's literally nothing that can come from that.
She gave a great example in the book of a client that she had who was a stay-at-home mom, married her high school sweetheart, and every day this woman felt like paralyzing fear. What if my husband dies? What if he gets sick? What if he's incapacitated some way and he can't take care of us basically anymore? Because she fully depended on him, which isn't a bad thing. But the fear paralyzed her from being able to do anything else. She was constantly taking care of him, making sure that his life was running well, that he was as healthy as possible. He had a really stressful job. He ended up getting a stroke and was paralyzed because of that, and needed not only to rest and he could not work, but also she needed to become his full-time caretaker on top of figuring out how to do things that she's never done before because she let her husband, manage those things. And they agreed to that, and that's fine.
Right.
But she spent her entire life in a space where afraid of what could go wrong, instead of then later she realized just taking that as an opportunity to learn more about what it is that she can't do and move slowly towards being in a more powerful place, a place where she has more agency. And it sucked. Obviously wasn't easy, but she more than managed, and he actually recovered some part of the way. And said that she had wished she had done this like years and years and years ago, instead of being afraid of the possibility of like failure and devastation. And the author of the book says like multiple times, it's never going to be as seriously bad as we think it is. It's not devastating. It's not the worst thing in the world. And if you feel fear, you're fearing really that you're not capable of dealing with the outcome. That woman was fearing not capable of dealing with the outcome. When she was, clearly she was. And when push comes to shove, like, we're pretty resilient. Like, we've dealt with some pretty bad stuff, like a pandemic. Like, who thought like 10 years ago that we would have effectively dealt with that in the US?
Yes. So. Yes. Well, I love that. Okay. Anything else for folks going into your space or the PhD in general? I know you said just start early, so I think I've covered everything. Anything else you want to share? No? Good to go? Well, thank you so much for joining us. I love all your perspectives, and I think so many good things throughout there. So I think that people are going to really learn a lot and apply it to their own lives, their own situations, and hopefully get into their ideal program, and also just prove that they're capable. Because that's really more important, I think, than anything. So
I think so too. Yeah, I think so too. Definitely agree. Yeah, it's been a joy.